Princess Nari stood on her knees in the middle of the huge crystal throne room. The walls around her sparkled like diamonds, but she felt no beauty in them today. Her hands shook as she kept her head down, not daring to look up at her father's angry face. Emperor Taemin sat on his golden throne, his blue-scaled skin glowing under the bright lights. His eyes, normally a soft green, now burned with rage and disappointment. The room was so quiet that Nari could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. "Look at me," Taemin commanded, his voice echoing off the crystal walls. Nari slowly raised her head. Around the throne room, hundreds of court members watched her like she was some kind of show. Their faces showed no pity, only curiosity about what would happen to the disgraced princess. "For 23 years I have tried to make you into a proper Valdorian princess," her father began, standing up from his throne. His voice grew louder with each word. "But you have failed me in every possible way." He started walking down the steps toward her, each footstep making a sharp sound on the crystal floor. "You cannot fight in neural combat. When other princesses your age can defeat entire squadrons with their minds, you cannot even control a single enemy soldier." Nari felt her cheeks burn with shame. It was true. During training sessions, she had always been the weakest. While her classmates could slip into other beings' minds and control them like puppets, Nari could barely make a simple connection. "You cannot command our bioships," Taemin continued. "These living vessels that have served our empire for thousands of years refuse to bond with you. They sense your weakness." The bioships were alive, grown rather than built. They needed a strong mental connection with their commander to function properly. Every time Nari tried to bond with one, the ship would reject her, sometimes even becoming sick from the failed connection. "But worst of all," her father said, now standing directly in front of her, "you show kindness to our enemies. You feel sorry for the races we have conquered. You question our right to rule over them." This was the part that made Taemin most angry. The Valdorian Empire had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved countless species. It was their way of life, their source of power and wealth. But Nari had always felt uncomfortable when she saw the suffering of their slaves. Just last month, she had been caught giving food to starving prisoners from the planet Corvana. When guards were beating a group of human slaves, she had stepped in to stop them. These actions had embarrassed her father in front of other noble families. "I have tried to teach you that strength is everything," Taemin said. "The strong rule, the weak serve. This is the natural order of the universe, but you refuse to learn." Prince Wujin, Nari's younger brother, stepped forward from beside the throne. Unlike Nari, he was everything their father wanted in a child: strong in neural combat, respected by the bioships, and completely without mercy toward their enemies. He smiled coldly at his sister's humiliation. "Since you cannot learn to rule," Emperor Taemin announced loudly so everyone in the court could hear, "you will learn what it means to be ruled." A cold fear ran through Nari's body. She knew her father was about to announce her punishment, and, from the anger in his voice, it would be severe. "You are no longer my daughter," Taemin declared. "You are no longer a princess of the Valdorian Empire. Your royal blood is stripped from you." Gasps echoed through the court. Removing someone's royal status was one of the worst punishments possible in their society. "You will be exiled to the primitive planet called Earth," her father continued. "There you will serve as a gift to one of their diplomats, Ambassador Jiwon. Perhaps living as a servant to these weak humans will teach you the lessons I could not." Nari felt tears forming in her eyes, but she forced them back. She would not cry in front of the court. "Guards, take her away," Taemin ordered. Two large Valdorian soldiers stepped forward and grabbed Nari's arms, pulling her to her feet. As they began dragging her toward the exit, her father called out one final time, "Learn what it means to be ruled, since you cannot rule." Those words followed Nari as she was pulled from the throne room, past the smirking faces of the court members, and toward a future she could never have imagined. The small transport ship landed with a dull thud on the concrete pad outside the Earth Embassy. Ambassador Jiwon stood waiting in the afternoon sun, her face carefully blank as she watched the ship's doors slide open. She had been dreading this moment for weeks. A Valdorian guard stepped out first, his massive form casting a long shadow. Behind him came what looked like a broken shell of a person. Nari stumbled down the ramp, her once proud posture now bent and defeated. Her blue skin had turned pale, almost grey, and her clothes were simple grey rags instead of royal robes. Jiwon felt a twist of anger in her stomach, but not at Nari. She was angry at Emperor Taemin for using his own daughter as a political insult. This wasn't diplomacy, this was cruelty, disguised as a gift. "Ambassador Jiwon," the guard said in broken English, "we present the former princess as a servant to your people. The Emperor hopes she will learn proper respect for authority." The guard shoved a datapad into Jiwon's hands and walked back to his ship without another word. Within minutes, the transport was gone, leaving Nari standing alone on the landing, pad like abandoned luggage. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. Nari kept her eyes fixed on the ground, her whole body tense, as if expecting to be hit. Jiwon realized that Nari was probably waiting for orders, maybe even punishment for some imagined offense. "Are you hungry?" Jiwon asked gently. Nari's head snapped up in surprise. In all her years as a princess, and especially during her disgrace, no one had asked about her comfort. She nodded slowly, not trusting her voice. Jiwon led her into the embassy building, past curious staff members who whispered to each other about the strange blue-skinned visitor. In her private quarters, Jiwon set out a simple meal of rice, vegetables, and tea. "Eat," she said, sitting across from Nari at the small table. Nari ate slowly at first, as if the food might be poisoned or taken away. But as Jiwon continued to sit quietly, making no demands, Nari began to relax slightly. She had not eaten a proper meal in days. "What do you expect me to do?" Nari finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean?" Jiwon replied. "My duties. My punishments. How I should serve you." Nari's words came out flat, emotionless. She had been trained to expect the worst from her captors. Jiwon felt her heart break a little. "There are no punishments here. You're not my slave, you're a guest in my home." Over the following days, Jiwon slowly introduced Nari to human customs. She showed her how humans ate together as equals, how they shared stories and laughter. Nari learned about human entertainment, art and music. For the first time in her life, she experienced kindness without conditions. But what surprised Jiwon most was Nari's incredible mind. When they played chess, Nari learned the rules in minutes and started winning games within hours. When Jiwon showed her news reports about military conflicts around the galaxy, Nari would point out tactical mistakes and suggest better strategies. "You see patterns that others miss," Jiwon observed one evening as they discussed a recent battle. "My father always said I was too weak to be a warrior," Nari replied sadly. "Maybe you're just a different kind of warrior than he expected." That comment planted a seed in Jiwon's mind. She began testing Nari with more complex military scenarios, historical battles and strategic puzzles. Every time, Nari's solutions were creative, unexpected and brilliant. After 2 weeks, Jiwon made a decision that could end her diplomatic career. She arranged a secret meeting with General Minho, the director of Earth's most prestigious military academy. "I want to enroll someone in your academy," she told him. "Civilian applications go through normal channels," Minho replied. "This isn't a normal application." Jiwon showed him videos of Nari solving military puzzles and analyzing battle tactics. "This person has a gift for strategy that I've never seen before." General Minho studied the recordings with growing interest. "Who is this person?" "Someone who needs a new chance at life. Her name will be Nara Kim. She's an exchange student from a distant colony." It wasn't entirely a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Minho looked at Jiwon suspiciously, but agreed to give Nara Kim an entrance exam. When Jiwon told Nari about the plan, the former princess stared at her in shock. "You want me to become a human soldier. I want you to become whatever you're meant to be," Jiwon said. "And I think that's something much greater than either of us can imagine right now." For the first time since her exile began, Nari smiled. Nara Kim stood in formation with 30 other cadets on the academy's training ground. The morning sun beat down on her back as Captain Junho paced in front of them, his sharp eyes studying each face. "Today we're practicing squad tactics," he announced. "I want you to work in teams of 5, plan your approach, assign roles, and execute a coordinated attack on the enemy position." The other cadets immediately broke into excited chatter, forming groups and discussing strategies. But Nara stood frozen, confusion written across her face. In Valdorian military training, there was no discussion. The commander's mind would simply connect to all soldiers, and everyone would move as one unit, like fingers on a hand. "Kim," Captain Junho called out, "you're with Team 3. Nara joined 4 human cadets who were already deep in planning. A tall boy named Hyun was drawing diagrams in the dirt, while a girl named Yuna pointed out potential problems with his ideas. 2 other cadets, Min Seok and Jaemin, were arguing about the best weapons to use. "What do you think, Nara?" Yuna asked, looking up at her new teammate. Nara opened her mouth, then closed it again. She had never been asked for her opinion during military planning before. In Valdorian culture, lower-ranking individuals waited for orders from their superiors. I don't know," she finally whispered. The team exchanged glances. They had heard rumors about the quiet exchange student who never spoke up in class discussions and always seemed lost during group exercises. The training exercise went badly. While other teams moved smoothly across the battlefield, Team 3 stumbled through their mission. Nara kept waiting for someone to take control of her mind and tell her what to do. When that didn't happen, she stood paralyzed, unsure how to act independently. "Kim, what are you doing?" Captain Junho shouted, as enemy paintball rounds splattered across her chest. "You're standing in the open like a target." After the exercise, Lieutenant Soyeon pulled Nara aside. The young instructor had noticed something interesting during the chaotic battle. "You predicted every enemy movement," she said quietly. "Even when your team was falling apart, you knew exactly where the opposing force would strike next." Nara looked surprised. "I did?" you called out. 3 ambush positions before the enemy even reached them. "How did you know?" "I just saw the pattern," Nara said slowly. "The way they moved, where they positioned themselves. It was obvious what they would do next." Lieutenant Soyeon made a mental note to watch this strange cadet more closely. Over the following weeks, Nara's struggles continued in group exercises, but her individual performance caught more attention. During strategy classes, she would sit quietly while other students debated tactics. But when instructors presented battle scenarios, Nara could spot weaknesses and opportunities that others missed entirely. Captain Junho began calling on her more often. "Kim, the enemy has fortified this mountain pass. How would you approach it?" At first, Nara would give textbook Valdorian answers, involving overwhelming force and direct assault. But slowly, as she learned more about human military thinking, her responses changed. "We could create a distraction here," she would say, pointing to a map, "while a small team flanks from this direction. Or we could wait and starve them out instead of attacking directly." The breakthrough came during a simulated battle in the Academy's virtual reality chamber. Nara was assigned to lead a squad for the first time, facing an enemy force twice their size. "Orders, squad leader?" asked Hyun, who had become more patient with his struggling teammate over the past months. Instead of trying to control everyone like a Valdorian commander, Nara tried something different. She asked each team member what they were good at, then gave them individual missions that played to their strengths. "Yuna, you're the best shot. Find a sniper position and cover our advance. Hyun, you're fast and quiet. Scout ahead and report enemy positions. Min Seok, you understand explosives. Set charges here and here." For the first time, Nara wasn't trying to control her team like puppets. Instead, she was inspiring them to do their best work independently. The mission was a complete success. Her squad defeated the larger enemy force with minimal casualties, using tactics that confused and frustrated their opponents. After the simulation ended, Captain Junho approached Nara with a rare smile. "That was impressive, Kim. You found your leadership style." But the real change came in how her fellow cadets treated her. Hyun clapped her on the shoulder. "Great job, team leader. That was the most fun I've had in training." Yuna grinned. "We should celebrate. Want to grab dinner together?" Nara felt a warm feeling in her chest that she had never experienced before. These humans weren't following her out of fear or programmed obedience. They actually liked her and wanted to spend time with her. Over shared meals and late-night study sessions, Nara learned about friendship. Hyun told jokes that made her laugh until her sides hurt. Yuna shared stories about her family and asked about Nara's background. Though Nara couldn't tell the complete truth, she found herself opening up about her feelings of inadequacy and her desire to prove herself. "You don't have to prove anything to us," Yuna said one evening as they studied together. "We already know you're special." For a girl who had spent her whole life being told she was worthless, those words meant everything. Lieutenant Nara Kim was reviewing battle reports in her small office when the emergency alarm started blaring throughout the base. Red warning lights flashed in the hallways as soldiers ran past her door, shouting orders and updates to each other. She grabbed her uniform jacket and rushed to the command center, where dozens of officers were crowded around holographic displays, showing star maps. The screens were filled with red warning indicators, each one representing a human colony under attack. "What's happening?" Nara asked Captain Junho, who was standing nearby with a grim expression. "We're under attack," he said without looking away from the displays. "Multiple colonies hit simultaneously. We've lost contact with 7 worlds in the past 4 hours." Nara felt her blood turn cold. She recognized the attack pattern immediately. It was classic Valdorian strategy. Strike fast, strike everywhere at once, and crush any organized resistance before it could form. On the main display, Admiral Kang was coordinating the emergency response. "Third Fleet, redirect to the Proxima system. 7th Fleet, defend the mining colonies at all costs." But even as he gave orders, new red indicators kept appearing on the map. Human fleets were being destroyed faster than they could respond to distress calls. "Sir," a communications officer called out, "we're receiving fragmentary reports from the Kepler colony. Before we lost contact, they reported that their own soldiers turned against them." Admiral Kang looked confused. "Turned against them? What does that mean?" Nara knew exactly what it meant, and the knowledge made her sick to her stomach. The Valdorians weren't just attacking with ships and weapons. They were using their most terrifying ability, neural control. Human defenders were being turned into puppets, forced to fight against their own people. "Admiral," another officer reported, "we've identified the enemy. It's the Valdorian Empire. Their bioships appeared without warning and began systematic attacks on our outer colonies." The room fell silent. Everyone had heard of the Valdorians, but they were supposed to be far away, focused on other parts of the galaxy. A peace treaty had been signed just a few years ago. "How many ships are we facing?" Admiral Kang asked. "At least 300 bioships, sir. Possibly more. They're using some kind of technology we've never seen before. Our people they're fighting each other, sir." Nara closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She could picture exactly what was happening on those colonies. Valdorian neural specialists would be connecting to human minds, overriding their free will and turning them into drones. Families would be forced to fight against each other. Friends would become enemies in the span of seconds. Over the next several hours, the situation grew worse. Entire star systems went dark, as Valdorian forces swept through human space like an unstoppable wave. The few survivors who managed to escape told horrible stories of watching their comrades suddenly turn and attack them with blank, emotionless faces. "We need reinforcements from the core worlds," Captain Junho said during an emergency briefing. "The core worlds are 3 weeks away," Admiral Kang replied grimly. "At this rate, we'll lose everything before help arrives." Lieutenant Soyan stood up from her position at a tactical display. "Sir, I've been analyzing the attack patterns. Whoever is leading this invasion knows our defensive strategies perfectly. They're countering every move we make before we even make it." "That's impossible," Admiral Kang said. "Our tactical information is classified." "Unless someone taught them how we think," Soyon replied quietly. Nara felt everyone's eyes turning toward her. As the only non-human in the room, suspicion was natural, but she knew the real truth was much worse than they imagined. "I need to speak with General Minho immediately," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. 20 minutes later, Nara sat across from General Minho in his private office. The older man looked like he had aged 10 years in the past day. Reports and battle maps covered his desk, all of them showing the same story. Humanity was losing badly. "You know something about this attack," he said. It wasn't a question. Nara nodded slowly. The leader of this invasion is Prince Wu Jin. She paused, knowing that her next words would change everything. He's my brother. General Minho leaned back in his chair, his face showing a mixture of shock and understanding. You're not from a distant colony, are you? No, sir. I'm Princess Nari of the Valdorian Empire. I was exiled here 3 years ago. The room was quiet, except for the distant sound of alarms and running footsteps in the hallways outside. Can you help us? General Minho asked finally. If I help you fight my own people, I can never go home, Nari said. I'll be a traitor to my entire species. If you don't help us, there won't be a home for any of us, Minho replied. Your brother is using neural control to turn our own people against us. We don't know how to fight that. Nari thought about Hyun and Yuna, her closest friends who were probably preparing for deployment right now. She thought about Captain Junho and Lieutenant Soyeon, who had taught her what real leadership meant. She thought about Ambassador Jiwon, who had shown her kindness when she expected only cruelty. These humans had given her something her own family never had: acceptance, friendship, and a chance to become who she was meant to be. What do you need me to do? She asked. General Minho pulled out a secure communicator. I need you to tell me everything you know about Valdorian warfare, and then I need you to help us turn their own tactics against them. Outside the window, another colony's marker disappeared. From the strategic display, swallowed by the advancing Valdorian fleet, the secure briefing room felt tense as 5 of humanity's top military leaders sat around a metal table. Admiral Seung, a veteran commander with grey hair and sharp eyes, studied the young woman across from him with obvious suspicion. Colonel Yejin, known for her tactical brilliance, kept her arms crossed and her expression cold. So you're telling us, Admiral Seung said slowly, that Lieutenant Nara Kim, who we've trusted for 3 years, is actually an alien princess? Nari sat straight in her chair, still wearing her human military uniform, but no longer hiding behind her false identity. Yes, sir. I am Princess Nari of the Valdorian Empire. The brother leading this invasion is Prince Wu Jin. Colonel Yejin leaned forward. How do we know this isn't some elaborate spy mission? Maybe you've been feeding information to your people this whole time. If I wanted to help the Valdorians win, I wouldn't be sitting here offering to stop them, Nari replied. Calmly, I would have disappeared the moment the invasion started. General Minho, who had already heard Nari's story, spoke up. She's right, and frankly, we're desperate enough to take any help we can get. The room's large display screen showed the latest battle reports. In just 1 week, humanity had lost 12 colonies and over 50 warships. The Valdorian advance seemed unstoppable. What exactly are you offering? Admiral Seung asked. Nari took a deep breath. I can teach you how to fight neural control. I know Valdorian biology, their ship designs, their battle tactics, but I have one condition. You're not in a position to make demands, Colonel Yejin said sharply. Actually, I am, Nari replied, because without my help, you'll lose this war. Within a month. My condition is simple. We don't just fight to save humanity. We fight to free all the enslaved species under Valdorian rule. The human commanders exchanged glances. Admiral Seung frowned. That's a much bigger war than defending our own territory. It's the only war worth fighting, Nari said firmly. The Valdorians have enslaved dozens of species across the galaxy. If we only defend human space, they'll just attack again in a few years with even more slaves to throw at you. General Minho nodded slowly. She has a point. We've been thinking too small. Fine, Admiral Seung said after a long pause. But first, prove you can actually help us. Show us these countermeasures you mentioned. The next day, Nari found herself in a research laboratory with 2 of humanity's best scientists. Dr. Jinwoo specialized in brain research, while Dr. Eunji was an expert in alien biology. Both looked fascinated and slightly nervous as Nari explained Valdorian neural control. The process works by overwhelming the target's mind with external thoughts, Nari explained, pointing to diagrams she had drawn on a whiteboard. Most species can't resist because they've never experienced mental invasion before. Dr. Jinwoo studied the diagrams carefully, but humans have natural mental defenses, don't they? Individual thinking, creativity, stubbornness. Exactly, Nari said with the first smile she'd shown in days. Humans are actually harder to control than most species because your minds are so chaotic and independent. We just need to strengthen those natural defenses. Over the next 2 weeks, working 18-hour days, the team developed what Nari called neural firewalls. These were mental exercises and techniques that could help humans resist psychic invasion. Think of your mind like a fortress, Nari explained to the first group of volunteer soldiers. The Valdorians attack by finding cracks in your mental walls. We're going to teach you how to seal those cracks and fight back. The training was unlike anything in human military history. Soldiers learned to recognize the feeling of mental invasion, a cold, creeping sensation like ice water in their thoughts. They practiced meditation techniques to strengthen their focus and willpower. Remember, Nari told them, the moment you feel something foreign in your mind, don't panic. Panic makes you weak. Instead, grab onto your strongest memory, something that makes you uniquely human. Private Chanwu raised his hand. What kind of memory? Anything that connects you to your humanity, Nari replied. The taste of your mother's cooking, the feeling of laughing with friends the moment you fell in love. Valdorians can't understand these emotions, so they can't control them. The first test came sooner than expected. A small Valdorian scout ship was captured during a raid, and its crew attempted to take control of their human captors. The guards who had been trained in neural firewalls successfully resisted the mental attack, while untrained personnel in the same facility were turned into temporary puppets. It works, Dr. Yunji reported excitedly to the command staff. The trained soldiers maintained their free will even under direct neural assault. But Nari knew this was just the beginning. We need to train thousands of soldiers, not just dozens, and we need to do it fast. Admiral Seong approved an emergency training program. Elite units from across human space were brought to secret facilities where Nari and her growing team of instructors taught them the new techniques. Captain Junho and Lieutenant Soyeon were among the first officers to complete the advanced training. This is incredible, Junho said after successfully resisting a simulated neural attack. I could feel the invasion trying to take hold, but my mind just bounced it off. The key is practice, Nari told him. Neural control works by surprise and overwhelming force, but if you're prepared and know how to fight back, even a powerful Valdorian neural specialist can't break through. As weeks passed, more and more human soldiers completed the training. They returned to their units carrying knowledge that could change the course of the war. But Nari knew that training soldiers was only the first step. To truly defeat the Valdorians, humanity would need to go on the offensive, and for that, they would need allies, other enslaved species who were ready to fight for their freedom. Are you ready for the next phase? General Minho asked during one of their planning sessions. Trey looked at the star maps showing Valdorian territory, thinking about all the worlds where enslaved beings waited for hope. Yes, she said. It's time to start a rebellion. The abandoned mining station on Kepler 7 had been dark for 3 weeks since the Valdorians captured it. But tonight, hidden in the shadows of the asteroid field, a small human strike team prepared for an impossible mission. Remember, Nari whispered to the 12 soldiers crouched around her, Valdorian commanders expect us to attack their strongest points head-on. We're going to do the opposite of everything they think we'll do. Commander Do-hyun, a grizzled veteran who had initially been skeptical of taking orders from someone so young, now hung on every word. He had seen Nari's tactics work 3 times before, liberating colonies that everyone thought were lost forever. The mining station has 40 Valdorian soldiers and about 200 human prisoners, Nari continued, studying the holographic layout. Standard Valdorian doctrine says they'll put their strongest defenses around the command center and the prisoner barracks. Captain Gina, who led the team's technical specialists, nodded. So we hit somewhere else first? We hit everywhere else, Nari said with a slight smile. Valdorians think in terms of primary objectives and secondary objectives. They can't handle multiple small threats happening at the same time. The attack began at exactly 0300 hours. Instead of one coordinated assault, Nari had divided her team into 6 pairs, each targeting a different system throughout the station. While Valdorian defenders rushed to protect what they thought was the main attack, the real damage was happening. Everywhere else, Private Seunghwan and Corporal Mion disabled the station's power grid. Sergeant Taehyung and Private Jisoo sabotaged the communication array. Each pair worked independently, making their own decisions about how to complete their missions. "This is chaos," the Valdorian station commander complained to his second-in-command. "Has alarms blared throughout the facility? Where is their main force? What is their objective?" He couldn't understand that chaos was exactly the point. Nari had learned that human creativity and individual thinking were humanity's greatest weapons against Valdorian military doctrine. When the lights went out and communications failed, Valdorian soldiers found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. Every time they responded to one threat, two more would appear in completely different locations. The liberation of the prisoners happened almost by accident. While Valdorian guards were distracted by explosions in the engine room, Commander Do-hyun and two soldiers simply walked into the prison area and started freeing people. "How did you get past the guards?" asked Dr. Park, a scientist who had been held captive for weeks. "There are no guards," Do-hyun replied, handing out weapons to the freed prisoners. "They're all running around trying to figure out what we're attacking." By dawn, the mining station was back in human hands. The Valdorian survivors were captured without a single human casualty, and 200 prisoners were free. More importantly, they had captured intact Valdorian equipment and intelligence. "How is this possible?" Emperor Taemin demanded when the report reached his palace. He stared at the tactical display showing the recaptured station. 40 trained Valdorian soldiers defeated by 12 humans? Prince Woojin, leading the invasion from his flagship, was equally confused. "Father, their tactics make no sense. They attack maintenance tunnels instead of command centers. They sabotage non-essential systems instead of going for primary targets. Perhaps these humans are more clever than we thought," the Emperor mused. But Nari was just getting started. Over the next 2 months, her growing network of resistance fighters struck again and again. Each victory followed the same pattern: small teams, multiple objectives, complete unpredictability. On the agricultural world of New Seoul, Captain Gina led a raid that freed an entire farming colony by simultaneously attacking 17 different food storage facilities. The Valdorian garrison spent so much time protecting their supplies that they forgot to guard the prisoners. Commander Do-hyun specialized in what he called ghost attacks, missions where human teams would complete their objectives and disappear before Valdorian forces even realized they were under attack. His favorite tactic was planting small explosive charges on non-critical systems throughout enemy bases, creating the illusion of massive coordinated strikes when they were actually just one person with a backpack full of bombs. "The key," Nari explained to her growing team of resistance leaders, "is to think like humans, not like Valdorians. They expect military hierarchy, clear objectives, and logical battle plans. Give them creativity, chaos, and confusion instead." The psychological effect on Valdorian forces was devastating. Soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds suddenly found themselves afraid of shadows, jumping at every strange noise, never knowing when or where the next impossible human victory would occur. Reports flooded back to Emperor Taemin's palace. Human forces captured supply depot with no apparent strategy. Entire battalion defeated by enemy force 1/10 their size. Prisoners liberated while garrison was distracted by simultaneous minor explosions. "What kind of commander leads these humans?" Taemin asked his advisors. Prince Woojin had been wondering the same thing. "Whoever it is thinks nothing like a proper military officer. Their strategies are artistic, creative, almost like they're making it up as they go along." What the Valdorians didn't understand was that Nari was combining the best of both worlds. She used her knowledge of Valdorian weaknesses with humanity's greatest strength, the ability to adapt and improvise in real time. "Every human soldier is like a small commander," she told her officers during a planning session. "Valdorians wait for orders from above. Humans can think for themselves and change their plans when they need to." As word spread of these impossible victories, more humans joined the resistance. Freed prisoners became new fighters. Captured Valdorian equipment was turned against its former owners. What had started as a desperate guerrilla campaign was growing into something much larger. In his palace, Emperor Taemin stared at reports, showing dozens of liberated worlds. For the first time in decades of conquest, the Valdorian Empire was losing territory instead of gaining it. "Find out who is leading this resistance," he ordered his intelligence officers. "I want to know everything about this human commander." He had no idea he was about to learn the identity of his own exiled daughter. The planet Corvana had been a slave world for 15 years. From orbit, it looked like a dying planet. Grey factories covered most of the surface, pumping black smoke into the poisoned sky. Millions of beings from dozens of conquered species worked in those factories, building weapons and ships for the Valdorian Empire. Nari stood on the bridge of her flagship, a captured Valdorian biocruiser that her human engineers had modified with Earth technology. Around her, the largest liberation fleet ever assembled, prepared for the most ambitious rescue mission in galactic history. "Final status report," she called to her mixed crew of humans and aliens. 57 ships ready. "For assault," reported Commander Do-hyun from the tactical station. 23,000 liberation troops from 12 different species. Captain Gina looked up from her engineering console. "The bioship modifications are holding steady. We've got full neural firewall protection across all vessels." This was the moment Nari had been working toward for months. Corvana wasn't just another Valdorian stronghold. It was a symbol. If they could free the most heavily guarded slave world in the Empire, it would prove that no Valdorian prison was unbreakable. "Benso." "The operation," Nari ordered. The attack on Corvana was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of traditional space combat, Nari used tactics that combined human creativity with alien biotechnology in ways that shocked both sides. Her bioships, infected with modified human computer viruses, began talking to the Valdorian defense, fleet's living vessels. The ships didn't attack each other. They convinced each other to switch sides. "What's happening to our ships?" demanded General Kyung, the Valdorian commander defending Corvana. He watched in horror as 3 of his biocruisers suddenly turned around and started attacking his own forces. On the planet's surface, the liberation was even more dramatic. Nari had spent weeks secretly communicating with slave leaders from different species, coordinating a simultaneous uprising. When her ground forces landed, they weren't fighting alone. They were joining a rebellion that was already happening. The Corvanian natives, tall insect-like beings with natural camouflage abilities, emerged from hiding places they had prepared for years. The Zelkari, small but incredibly strong creatures who had been forced to work in the mines, used their knowledge of the underground tunnels to attack Valdorian positions from below. But the most shocking moment came when Commander Minjae, a Valdorian officer who had been questioning his empire's methods, broadcasted a message to all Valdorian forces on the planet. "Now, my fellow Valdorians," his voice echoed through military communication channels, "I have seen what our empire really is. We are not bringing order to the galaxy. We are bringing slavery and death. I choose to stand with those who fight for freedom." Minjae's defection caused chaos in the Valdorian ranks. For the first time in their history, they faced the possibility that some of their own people might join the rebellion. The battle for Corvana lasted 3 days, but it wasn't really a battle. It was a rescue operation on a massive scale. Nari's forces concentrated on protecting civilians and destroying slave facilities, rather than simply defeating enemy soldiers. "Focus on the prison complexes," she radioed to her ground commanders. "Every being we free becomes a potential ally." Her strategy worked perfectly. As more slaves were liberated, they joined the fight. Factory workers who had been building Valdorian weapons turned those same weapons against their captors. Beings who had been enemies under Valdorian rule worked together as allies in freedom. By the end of the 3rd day, Corvana was free. But, more than that, it had become the capital of something new, a multi-species alliance dedicated to ending Valdorian rule across the galaxy. In his palace, Emperor Taemin received the devastating news with growing fury. "How many ships did we lose?" 37 vessels, my lord," his aide reported nervously. 6 million slaves freed, and there's something else." Taemin's scaled features darkened. "What?" We've identified the human commander leading these rebellions. Analysis of communication intercepts and tactical patterns suggests it's someone with intimate knowledge of our military doctrine and... The aide hesitated. Speak. The commander appears to be Princess Nari, your exiled daughter. The throne. Room fell silent. For a long moment, Taemin stared at the holographic display showing the liberated worlds, seeing them with new eyes. The creative tactics, the ability to turn Valdorian strengths into weaknesses, the strange mercy shown to captured enemies, it all made sense now. "My useless daughter," he whispered, then began to laugh. It was not a happy sound. Meanwhile, Prince Woojin was experiencing his own moment of realization. His fleet had just suffered its worst defeat yet at the Battle of Proxima Station, where human forces had used captured Valdorian bioships against him with devastating effectiveness. "Brother," he said into his secure communicator, speaking to his father, "we need to discuss strategy. These humans are different now." "They're not just humans anymore," Taemin replied. "They're led by your sister." The silence that followed was filled with shock, anger, and something neither Valdorian male wanted to admit: respect. On Corvana, Nari stood before a gathering of leaders from 20 different species: humans, Corvanians, Zelkari, reformed Valdorians, and beings whose names she was still learning to pronounce, all united by their desire for freedom. "Today we proved something important," she told the assembled crowd. "We proved that the Valdorian Empire can be defeated. But more than that, we proved that former enemies can become allies when they fight for the same cause." Commander Minjae stepped forward, still wearing his Valdorian military uniform, but with the Imperial insignia removed. "What do we do now?" Nari looked at the tactical displays showing Valdorian territory, thinking about all the world still under Imperial rule, all the beings still waiting for freedom. "Now we take this rebellion to every slave world in the galaxy," she said, "and we don't stop until every being has the right to choose their own destiny." The cheers that followed could be heard across the liberated planet, carrying a message of hope to the stars. The age of Valdorian dominance was ending, and something new was beginning. The massive Valdorian diplomatic ship descended through Corvana's atmosphere like a silver whale, its biohull pulsing with nervous energy. Citizens from dozens of liberated species watched from the ground as the vessel landed in the center of New Freedom City, the capital that had been built from the ruins of the old slave factories. Nari stood on the landing platform, flanked by her closest allies. Commander Do-hyun kept his hand near his weapon, while Captain Gina monitored communications for any sign of treachery. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The ship's organic doors dilated open, and out stepped General Sunwoo, Nari's former military instructor from her childhood. He looked older now, his blue scales dulled with age, but his eyes still held the same sharp intelligence she remembered. "Princess Nari," he said formally, bowing in the traditional Valdorian manner. "I'm not a princess anymore," Nari replied, coolly. "I'm Supreme Commander of the Liberation Alliance." General Sunwoo's expression didn't change. "Your father sent me to deliver a message. May we speak privately?" Nari gestured to a nearby building that had been converted into a meeting hall. As they walked, curious aliens and humans lined the streets, whispering to each other about the strange sight of Valdorian diplomats on a free world. Inside the meeting hall, General Sunwoo activated a privacy field that would prevent anyone from listening to their conversation. Then he sat across from Nari at a simple wooden table, a far cry from the crystal furniture of the Imperial Palace. "You've caused quite a stir back home," he began. "Your father is impressed." Nari raised an eyebrow. "Impressed enough to stop enslaving entire species? Impressed enough to offer you something unprecedented?" Sunwoo leaned forward. "Full reinstatement of your royal status. Command of half the Imperial fleet. Your own territory to govern as you see fit." The offer hung in the air between them. It was everything Nari had once dreamed of: acceptance from her father, military command, a place in Valdorian society. "There's a condition, isn't there?" she asked. "Abandon this rebellion. Leave the humans and other species to their fate. Come home and take your rightful place in the Empire." Sunwoo's voice carried a note of genuine care. Nari, you were always too good for exile. Your father knows that now. For a moment, Nari was quiet. She thought about her childhood, about desperately wanting her father's approval. She thought about the pain of rejection and the years of believing she was worthless. Then she thought about Hyun and Yuna, her first real friends. She thought about Ambassador Jiwon's kindness, about the trust in Commander Do-Yun's eyes, about the hope in the voices of freed slaves across the galaxy. "Tell my father his offer is rejected," she said firmly. General Sunwoo looked genuinely surprised. "Nari, this is everything you ever wanted." "No," she replied, standing up. "This is everything I thought I wanted when I was a scared, lonely princess. I'm not that person anymore." "Then what do you want?" Nari walked to the window and looked out at the bustling city below. Humans worked alongside Corvanians. Zelkari children played with human kids. Former Valdorian soldiers like Commander Minjae taught defensive tactics to mixed groups of species. "I want freedom for every being in this galaxy," she said, "including the Valdorian people themselves." "What does that mean?" Nari turned back to face her former mentor. "It means I'm not stopping until the Empire falls. I'm going to liberate the homeworld itself." The color drained from General Sunwoo's face. "You're talking about invading Valdoris? Prime, that's impossible. It's the most heavily defended world in the galaxy. So was Corvana," Nari replied with a slight smile. "I'll give you one chance to deliver another message to my father. Any Valdorian who wants to join the cause of freedom is welcome. Any who choose to stand with slavery will be treated as an enemy." After General Sunwoo's ship departed, Nari called an emergency meeting of the Liberation Alliance's top commanders. The conference room filled with beings from across the galaxy, all united by their commitment to ending oppression. "The Emperor has rejected our offer of peaceful surrender," she announced. "That means we're going to have to take freedom by force." Admiral Ki-hyun, a former human fleet commander who had joined the rebellion after the liberation of his home colony, studied the tactical displays. "Valdoris Prime has 300 orbital defense platforms and a permanent fleet of over 1,000 bioships, plus ground-based defenses that have never been tested in actual combat," added Captain Daeon, a former Valdorian officer who had defected after witnessing the liberation of Corvana. "My people believe their homeworld is unconquerable. Every fortress has a weakness," Nari said confidently. "We just need to find it." Over the following months, the Liberation Alliance began assembling the largest military force in galactic history. Ships arrived daily at the secret staging areas, human cruisers upgraded with captured Valdorian biotechnology, Corvanian stealth vessels, Zelkari mining ships converted to carry troops, and dozens of defected Valdorian bioships. But the most important arrivals weren't ships, they were people. Refugees from hundreds of worlds volunteered to fight for liberation. Former slaves became soldiers. Scientists from dozens species worked together to develop new technologies. "We're not just building a fleet," Commander Do-Hyun observed during one planning session. "We're building a new kind of civilization." Meanwhile, on Valdoris Prime, Emperor Taemin stared at intelligence reports showing the massive buildup of enemy forces. For the first time in his long reign, he felt something he had never experienced before: fear. "How many ships do they have now?" he asked his military advisors. "Over 2,000 vessels of various sizes," General Sunwoo reported. "But that's not what worries me most." "What does?" "The morale reports from our own forces. Word is spreading about Valdorians joining the rebellion. Some of our commanders are questioning whether we're fighting for the right cause." Taemin's claws scraped against his throne's armrests. His exiled daughter hadn't just learned to fight. She had learned to inspire others to fight alongside her. She had become exactly the kind of leader he had always wanted to be, but in service of everything he opposed. "Double the defenses around the homeworld," he ordered. "If Nari wants to come home, we'll give her the welcome she deserves." But deep in his heart, Emperor Taemin wondered if he was preparing to fight a war he had already lost the moment he banished his daughter to Earth. The crystal throne room that had once witnessed Nari's greatest humiliation now echoed with the footsteps of liberation forces. Sunlight streamed through the massive windows, casting rainbow patterns across the floor where dozens of species stood together as equals. Humans in modified armor stood beside towering Corvanians, while small but fierce Zelkari warriors took positions next to reformed Valdorian soldiers. Nari walked slowly down the center aisle, her boots clicking against the crystal floor with each measured step. She wore simple battle armor decorated with symbols from every liberated world, a living representation of the alliance she had built. Behind her came her closest allies, Commander Do-hyun, Captain Jina, Admiral Ki-hyun, and Commander Min-jae, representing the unity that had made their victory possible. Emperor Taemin sat motionless on his golden throne, his aged features showing a mixture of pride and defeat. Prince Woojin stood at his father's right side, his hand resting on his weapon, ready for a fight he knew he couldn't win. "My daughter returns," Taemin said, his voice carrying across the silent room. "Though I hardly recognize the broken princess I sent away. That princess died the day you banished her," Nari replied, stopping at the base of the throne steps. "I am something new now." Around the room, her diverse forces maintained disciplined positions. This wasn't a mob seeking revenge. It was an organized military force led by beings who understood both justice and mercy. "I have one final offer," Emperor Taemin said, rising from his throne. "Take your rightful place as my heir. Accept the crown of the Valdorian Empire, rule as you see fit." A murmur rippled through the room. It was an incredible offer, everything any Valdorian had ever dreamed of achieving. "You would give me absolute power?" Nari asked. "Yes. The throne, the fleet, the empire itself. Just restore order to the galaxy." Nari looked around the throne room, seeing it with different eyes than she had as a child. The crystal walls that had once seemed beautiful now looked cold and intimidating. The golden throne appeared designed to separate the ruler from the people rather than connect them. "I don't want absolute power," she said simply. "I've learned that real strength comes from earning the trust of those you serve, not commanding." "Their fear." Prince Woojin stepped forward, his patience finally exhausted. "Enough talk, you're still the weak sister who couldn't even command a single bioship." He drew his neural sword, a weapon that could cut through both physical armor and mental defenses. In traditional Valdorian culture, disputes between royalty were settled through single combat. "Brother," Nari said sadly, "you still don't understand what I've become." The duel that followed was unlike any combat the throne room had ever witnessed. Woojin fought with classic Valdorian techniques, powerful, direct attacks designed to overwhelm his opponent through superior strength and neural domination. But Nari fought like a human. She moved unpredictably, using the crystal pillars and throne steps as cover. When Woojin tried to invade her mind with neural attacks, her human-trained mental firewalls deflected them effortlessly. She turned his own aggressive momentum against him, leading him into positions where his strength became a disadvantage. "How are you doing this?" Woojin gasped, struggling to land a single effective blow. "Are you fight like you think?" Nari replied, dancing away from another heavy swing. "In straight lines, following rigid patterns, I learned to fight like humans think, creatively, adaptively, with individual initiative." The end came when Woojin overextended himself in a massive downward strike, aimed at crushing his sister. Nari simply stepped aside and used his own momentum to send him crashing into the crystal wall. He slumped to the ground, defeated but alive. "I could kill you," Nari said, standing over her brother with her weapon ready. "But I choose mercy." She turned to address the entire room, her voice carrying to every corner. "The Valdorian Empire as it existed is finished, but the Valdorian people don't have to be our enemies. I offer you a choice." Emperor Taemin watched his daughter with growing amazement. This was leadership beyond anything he had ever imagined. "Join the Galactic Confederation of Free Worlds," Nari continued. "Keep your culture, your traditions, your pride. But abandon slavery and conquest. Learn to earn your place in the galaxy through cooperation instead of domination. And if we refuse," asked one of the court nobles, "then you'll be treated like any other oppressive regime. Your military will be disbanded, your government replaced, your people occupied, until they learn to live peacefully with their neighbors." The room fell silent as the Valdorians considered their options. Emperor Taemin looked at his daughter, no longer his daughter, but a leader who had surpassed him in every way. "You offer us partnership instead of punishment?" he asked. "I offer you the chance to be part of something greater than conquest," Nari replied. "The Valdorians have incredible knowledge and abilities. Imagine what you could accomplish if you use that power to help other species instead of enslaving them." Slowly, Emperor Taemin descended from his throne. With each step, he seemed to shed the weight of absolute authority that had defined his entire life. When he reached the bottom, he performed something unprecedented. He bowed to his daughter. "Valdoris Prime accepts membership in the Galactic Confederation," he announced, "and I hereby recognize Nari as the rightful supreme commander of the Allied forces." The throne room erupted in cheers from dozens of different species. Humans embraced Valdorians. Former enemies clasped hands as new allies, and the sound of celebration echoed off the crystal walls. Commander Do-hyun approached Nari with a smile. "So what now, Supreme Commander?" Nari looked around the room at the incredible diversity of beings who had chosen to stand together. "Now we rebuild, not just the worlds that were destroyed, but the very idea of how different species can live together." Captain Gina grinned. "That sounds like the biggest challenge. Yet, good thing we've gotten good at impossible challenges," Nari replied. As the celebration continued around them, Emperor Taemin stood beside his daughter, his equal now, not his subject. "I tried to break you," he said quietly. "I thought I was teaching you a lesson about power." "You were," Nari replied. "Just not the lesson you intended. You taught me that real power isn't about controlling others. It's about inspiring them to choose to follow you." Outside the palace windows, ships from across the galaxy filled the sky, not as conquerors, but as partners in building a new kind of civilization. The age of empires was ending, and the age of cooperation had begun, and it had all started with a princess who learned that sometimes being banished from one world is just the first step toward changing the entire galaxy.